Now, look, I don't know what the bloody hell is going on in Britain right now, but we need to pull our socks up. It appears we're accommodating many people who, quite frankly, hate us and hate our allies. Not least, Iran supporters who are brazenly operating all across this country. Let's kick off with this one, shall we? Here's a Ben Leo Tonight exclusive for you. I can reveal that a former senior member of the Iranian government that issued the fatwa on Salman Rushdie is now living a cushy life in a £1 million North London home. The Iranian man, who I'm not going to name tonight for various reasons, backs the Islamic death sentence on Rushdie after the publication of his book, The Satanic Verses. The Met Police has been studying a legal dossier accusing him of encouraging terrorism under the 2006 Terror Act. Since living in London, the former government minister has frequently praised the late General Qasem Soleimani of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards as a national hero of Iran and Islam. The Americans classed the IRG as a terrorist group, and President Trump killed Soleimani in a drone strike in 2020. Separately to that, if that wasn't bad enough, I can tell you that Hamas's former commander in the West Bank is also living a life of comfort in London after buying his council house under right to buy. Of course he did. According to US intel, the man ran their terrorist operations in the West Bank and these days helps organise pro-Palestine protests in London. Aren't we generous? So, there's two people who should probably be deported, but hang tight because there's more to come. You ready for the next one? This is a London takeaway that's gone viral overnight after advertising its services using footage of Iranian ballistic missiles striking civilians in Israel. I mean, that was the Lebanese grill in Harlesden, North London. The food looks all right, but I'm not quite sure about the missiles. Then we had this situation outside the Iranian embassy in London yesterday. So 2 people were allegedly attacked for protesting against the Iranian regime. 7 have since been arrested for GBH. All this, of course, comes off the back of the absolutely insane scenes at RAF Brize Norton on your screen now, where 2 pro-Palestine protesters managed to scoot onto the runway, yes, with scooters, and cause millions of pounds worth of damage to a Voyager aircraft and indeed the runway itself. 20 years ago, the Defence Secretary would have resigned for that blunder. Now we just throw our hands in the air and mutter some outrage before accepting Britain's surrender. Then, separately, tonight, we've had breaking news that an alleged Iranian spy has been arrested in Cyprus, accused of plotting a terror attack on a British airbase. What makes it worse is the man, who is British, believe it or not, is alleged to have links to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the very same organisation our man living in North London appears to idolise. Let's not forget we had 5 Iranians arrested last month who were accused of plotting to carry out an attack on the Israeli embassy in London. And of course, in February this year, Daniel Khalif was jailed for 14 years after escaping prison while awaiting trial for spying for Iran. The former British Army soldier had been passing sensitive information, including the names of Special Forces soldiers, to Tehran. So, let's recap, shall we? We've got a former Iranian government minister living in London who supports terrorists and issues fatwas. A former Hamas terror chief living in London. London takeaways advertising kebabs using footage of Iranian missiles on Israel. British soldiers spying for Iran. Iranian terror plots against British military bases foiled. Iranians nicked for an alleged plot to attack the Israeli embassy in London. Palestine protesters destroying aircraft at RAF bases. Oh, and breaking tonight, GB News can reveal more than 1,000 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally in less than 48 hours. Yes, more than 1,000. 400 arrived in Dover yesterday on rubber dinghies, and there was close to 600 today. That's more than 18,000 now for the year. Very good. What's been happening to our country takes the absolute biscuit. We need to buck up our ideas fast before it's too late. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel, the former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley, the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards and the journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. Welcome along, panel. Peter Blexley, I'll start with you. What the bloody hell is going on in Britain?
Should we go for a lamb bomber afterwards? Or maybe a chicken shish? Who knows? Anyway, right, I'll tell you what's been happening in this country. For the last 3 decades or more, the progressives have been in charge. You know, that fluffy, wokey, intolerant lot? who rule so much of the civil service, HR departments and the such like, and have infected every part of public life. They've been in charge. That's why this country has dropped the ball massively through successive governments, because intolerant progressives have ruled the roost. And that's why we've got to this pathetic situation where an RAF base can be breached by people wanting to damage aeroplanes, and so much more of what you've mentioned tonight.
Yeah.
Somebody has got to get a grip. We need a leader, we need a government that is absolutely going to get a grip on what is so wrong with our country, and drag it back, kicking and screaming, into being the once great nation that it was.
Linda, is it salvageable? Is it darkest before the dawn? Is there still a future, a bright future to be salvaged?
Well, it's funny you should use that expression, it's dark, it's the darkest hour, is just before dawn, because what worries me, and this brings into sharp focus what is going on geopolitically between Iran and Israel, is that we can't expect that situation to have no repercussions as far as we are concerned here, or indeed our military bases abroad. We're now on such a precipice with that conflagration in the Middle East that the situation we're looking at now really needs addressing, because it can only get a great deal worse. We already know that two B-2 bombers took off late this afternoon from Missouri, heading for Guam.
B-52s,
B-52s, and then go straight to Diego Garcia to position themselves ready for the conflict. So I think this is a very, very worrying situation.
And by the way, can I just say on those B-52s heading to Diego Garcia, the current situation is such a joke because of Keir Starmer's deal, Paul Richards. The US have to inform the British that B-52s are heading to Diego Garcia. We then have to inform Mauritius that American B-52s are heading to Diego Garcia, who are, of course, linked closely to China and Iran. What a joke.
The Chinese will know full well that's happening anyway, by the way, because of their intelligence and surveillance. But on the point about where's Britain heading, I think we have to recognise we are now on a war footing, and the Prime Minister has said this. That will inform all kinds of domestic policy. I'm glad, for example, ministers have prescribed Palestine action, that they took quick action on that one this weekend, making that an illegal organisation. We have to recognise that anyone that provides succour to Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis and all the Iranian-backed groups that have their proxies in this country, as well as around the world, have to be stamped on. We need to up the level of investment in intelligence services, and we have to stop this idea that it's OK to go out and protest with all these sort of anti-Semitic imagery.
What should happen to that London takeaway who's advertising their kebabs and shishas using Iranian ballistic missile footage?
In World War I and World War II, when anyone that was felt to be pro-German had a crowd outside closing them down. You know, this was not allowed.
I'll tell you what, they have a crowd outside, Paul. They have a crowd.
Queuing up for kebabs.
But no, they're supporting. They have a crowd outside. They're supporting them. That clip has gone viral online with tens of thousands of likes from a lot of people in Britain. There's not a crowd saying, shut down, what the hell are you... Here's the footage.
Can I just ask Peter, I mean, what do you think, Peter, of the streets today? You almost have, it was described as the Battle of the Flags. We've got so many protests going on in the streets of London and a couple of other cities today. We've got pro-Palestine marches, we've got Israeli marches, we've got pro-Iranian marches. I mean, what do we do about that?
Well, shamefully, the Metropolitan Police has appeased so many of these pro-Palestinian marches when people have walked along issuing their disgusting anti-Semitic chants, carrying flags and banners that should have led immediately to their arrest. But the cowardly Metropolitan Police chose not to do so. And what happens when you appease people? You empower them.
Embolden them.
And that's what's happened. This is all a result of the progressives. The progressives run the civil service. The progressives, the pathetic progressives, run the Metropolitan Police. Who is going to get a grip as this country slides inexorably into an abyss?
Absolutely. And just going back to Brize Norton, one of the big problems there is that the RAF regiment, whose job it is to protect our air bases, has been denuded and cut back. A lot of these bases are now defended by private security firms. And I don't know what they're doing.
Someone needs to resign for that.
Well,
someone needs to resign. John Healey needs to resign. Somebody needs to fall on their sword for that. That is an absolute joke. That is the epitome of a country on its knees. You've got two vandals, or, I mean, they should be classed as terrorists. By the way, they should be shot on sight. If that was Moscow, or if that was America, if that was Area 51 in Nevada, they would be shot on sight.
This is the problem, though. The private security guards are not the RAF regiment, and they can't shoot people on sight because they are private.
The private security guards probably aren't even from this country, let me tell you that. Look at the security guards at Asylum Hotel.
It's endemic of the progressives, whereby people who supervise or manage people are afraid to say, do this, please, and do it properly, do it now. Oh, I think I'll go to a tribunal, you're bullying me. This is a progressive nonsense that has ruled the roost for 3 decades or so. And this is coming home to roost.
Just a very quick point there. Your intro there, for the news script, said these are stunts by Palestine Action. They're not stunts, they are sabotage.
Yes.
And they are people who are...
Well, Keir Starmer called it vandalism today.
Well, I think
last night.
I think that was the wrong word too. I think
he couldn't even name them.
I think it is sabotage, and they should be treated like that.
He called it vandalism, and he couldn't even name the group. He said he just called them vandals. You've destroyed millions of pounds worth of border.
No, you know why he's called it vandalism? Because he doesn't want it classified as a terrorism offence. Right. They are enemies. They are enemies of the state. These people. Not so long ago, the RAF used to have its own police service with many dog handlers who would patrol bases and would prevent this kind of stuff.
They've been cut by successive governments.
In simple terms, what do you think Keir Starmer can do now to get on top of the situation?
Well, straight away, by prescribing Palestine Action, then he can send the police in to disrupt their activities, to arrest their leaders, to smash up their headquarters in London and disrupt their activities.
And someone from the RAF should be sacked as well. Just finally, before we move on, what do you make of the revelations tonight that I brought you, that there's a former Iranian senior minister, I know his name, I know where he lives, I'm not going to name him just yet, who lives in North London. He backs the call for the fatwa on Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie, of course, escaped with his life after being attacked some years ago. And he also praised the IRG, which the US considers a terrorist group. This guy lives in a £1 million house in North London. And separately, just to remind you, we've got a Hamas commander who ran their terrorist operations in the West Bank, living in a council house in North London, which he's since been allowed to buy under right to buy.
It was the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that were responsible for the last upsurge internally in Iran.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the young woman, Masha Asimi, had her headscarf pulled back and showed her hair, and she was tortured to death in an Iranian prison cell?
Yeah.
I mean,
what should happen to these guys living in London?
Counter-terrorism police should be queuing up to slap the handcuffs on.
Yeah, well, they're not. They're just not. They're allowed to walk freely through leafy North London and carry on with their day and go shopping at Aldi.
Well, they are under surveillance, though, aren't they? I mean, the fact...
I don't know, are they?
Well, they will be, won't they? Let's face it. But the IRG should be prescribed as well, actually, by the way.
They are terrorists.
That should be next.
OK, well, there we go. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but, yeah, I mean, that's the current situation. I just think that the RAF situation at Brize Norton, for me, was just the tip of the iceberg, and it's something that really wound me up. How can that happen in this country? And even worse, as I said, how can nobody fall on their sword for it? We need a resignation, we need someone to be fired. But again, we just throw our hands in the air, we talk about it for a moment and mutter and say, oh, what an outrage, and then we move on to something else.
Oh, lessons will be learned.
Yeah, exactly.